So, in this video, I'm going to be talking about the verification principle, which comes under the topic of religious language. Now, this is a fairly straightforward theory, and I'm not going to talk too much about the advantages and disadvantages of the verification principle, because as you'll see, I'll be talking more about the problems which occur with it and why people support it, which is basically its strengths and weaknesses, but I will definitely add them on my blog. Now, we have the strong verification principles, then the weak verification principle was formulated, and then the falsification principle by Anthony Flew was formulated. Now, the falsification principle by Anthony Flew you can find in my next video. So for now, the verification principle. So let's start with the strong one, because that was the very first one to come about. Now, where we have to begin is we have to begin with one of probably the best philosophers of the 20th century, Wittgenstein. Now, he formulated the picture theory of language, where he said a statement is only meaningful if it can be proved by sensory experience, or if we can imagine it in our head. So if you say carrot, I can imagine a carrot in my head, or if you say the cat sat on the mat, I can imagine the cat sitting on a mat in my head. Therefore, it's meaningful. Now, the logical positivists, they adapted his theory to create the strong verification principle, which said that a statement is only meaningful if it satisfies any of the criteria, and the criteria is made up of three components. The first component is that statements to be true must be analytically true. This means it must be true by definition. For example, 2 plus 2 equals 4. The second one is they must be deductively true. So, Socrates was a man. All men are mortal. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. So that statement, Socrates is mortal, is deductively true, therefore is meaningful. The last one is synthetically true. Now, this basically means that if you say to me the sky is blue, that is meaningful. Why? Because I can look outside and I can say, yes, the sky is blue. Now, this was how the strong verification principle came about. Peter Cole supported it. He said, just like scientific theories are accepted and rejected according to evidence, so should statements, and this is why religious statements are meaningless, because they cannot be proven analytically, deductively, synthetically. Now, this is very problematic because not all scientific laws can be verified. You cannot say gravity is constantly everywhere and will always be like this. You cannot make a scientific statement. So some of the things that we believe, they don't actually follow it. Secondly, historical statements cannot be verified. And the whole theory itself, the verification principle, cannot sort of pass its own theory. It dissolves in its own juices, and what this means is that the verification principle is meaningless too. So if religious language is meaningless, we should leave it. So is the verification principle. The argument fails. It is also not possible, according to some scholars, to test religious language in terms of biblical language, because not everyone agrees with biblical language. Not everyone agrees Jesus fed 5,000. Some people will say 4,000, things like that. Not everyone agrees with them. But the more important point is that the Christian thought is that God is out of this world. He's transcendent. He's beyond this world. So hence he's not subjected to our human in this world imminent tests. So how can we test something that's not even in this world? And lastly, miracles do provide evidence to synthetically prove religious statements. No matter how much no matter how much you don't believe in miracles, if you are going to argue through the strong verification principles, you have to accept that miracles can be synthetic evidence of a religious statement being true. And I will also talk about John Hick here, because he had the eschatological argument, which was basically that we can prove religious statements synthetically. Why? Because when we die, we will be aware and these things will be proven, hence we can beat this system. And also, Keith Ward, as you'll see in my next video, he also says that you can prove religious statements through the strong verification principle, because God could verify. Oh, sorry. Actually, That's wrong, because strong verification principles are analytically, deductively, synthetically true. Keith Ward's point, which I will say in 1 minute, because that's to do with the weak verification principle. So this is really simple. Now, AJ, he saw these criticisms, so he formulated his own verification principle, and he said, firstly, when I say that religious statements are meaningless, I'm not just talking about theistic statements, I'm talking about atheist and agnostic statements. So if AJS says God does not exist, then that's also meaningless, is basically what he's saying. He said this is because they are not significant propositions, as they cannot be contradicted or proven, hence falsified or verified. So what he basically said, that actually you can still have a full theory if it's verifiable in principle, in theory. So just like Swinburne said, with the strong verification principle, you can't prove that the statement all ravens are black is actually correct. Well, AJS says yes, it is meaningful, because in theory, if you can verify it, passes the weak verification principle test. Now, Keith Ward. Now, what I was trying to say is that he said that if God is an amazing thing, he could at any point verify a statement by sending, he could come down in a form in this world, just like Jesus came down at any point and verify your statements. And in fact, he did with Jesus. So this means that actually, in theory, you can actually prove that religious statements are meaningful, hence sort of defeating the point of AJ's weak verification principle. Now, John Hicks is catalogically argument. Now, I said synthetically you can prove in the strong verification principle, because after you die you will sense the truth. But actually, it's also to the weak verification principle, because you haven't died, you haven't experienced it, so it's more in theory. So I would use it more for the weak verification principle, but come exam time, if it's purely in strong verification, you could argue and manipulate the data for this one. Many religions have claims, such as Jesus died on the cross, which are historical. And historical statements, in theory, can be proven according to AJ's verification principle, hence meaningful. And as I said, Swinburne was talking all about ravens being black. Can you prove it? Can you not? Well, now you can. And Swinburne added that actually all of this is rubbish, because if you understand something, just like Wittgenstein's picture theory, if you picturize it, except he's saying if you can understand it and you gain something from it, it has meaning. So if I say to you, God exists, you understand it, it doesn't have to change your life, but you can understand it, you can respond to it, therefore it is meaningful. Thank you for watching, and I will hopefully upload the falsification principle next.